"Drink and you will no longer be blind," a little girl told the millionaire, but he feels a pain in his chest and does something terrible. Leave a comment telling me what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10, and let me know what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you enjoyed my story and get to know you better, so please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The March morning sun warmed the cobblestones of Oak Creek's central square when Arthur Vance lost his balance for the third time that week. At 69, his white cane couldn't fully compensate for the 3 years of total blindness caused by the stroke that had destroyed not only his vision, but the entire life he had built over 5 decades as an entrepreneur. The fall was violent. His right knee struck the curb near the Colonial Fountain, tearing a groan of pain from him that echoed across the nearly empty square. Blood seeped through the dress pants he insisted on wearing, even after losing everything, a desperate attempt to maintain a dignity he felt slipping through his fingers like fine sand. "Did you hurt yourself badly, sir?" The childish voice came out of nowhere, soft as a New England breeze. Arthur tried to lift his head, but his vision remained in the absolute void he had known for so long. "Who's there?" "It's me, mister. I came to help." Small footsteps approached, and he felt a delicate presence beside him. "Hold on, I'll get some water for you." Arthur tried to protest, but the child had already moved away. The sound of running water from the fountain reached his ears, mixed with the morning noises of the city he had once ruled with a firm hand through his construction company, Vance Materials. Now he was just a broken man, dependent on a minimal pension and the charity of others. "Here you go." The voice returned, accompanied by the sound of water being poured into what felt like a crumpled can. "Drink this water, mister. My mum always said the water from the fountain works miracles." Small, calloused hands touched his, guiding the makeshift cup to his lips. Arthur hesitated for a moment, then drank. The water was icy, with a metallic taste that reminded him of the artesian wells of his rural childhood. "There, now you won't be blind anymore." The child's innocent words struck Arthur like a dagger. "Little one, that's not how it works. I've lost my sight forever." "No, mister, the fountain water cures everything. My mum said so." The voice carried an absolute conviction that only children possess. "She said that when we drink with faith, miracles happen." Arthur felt something strange happening in his chest. First, there was a sharp pain, as if someone was squeezing his heart with force. Then, an overwhelming dizziness that made the world spin even in the darkness. "Mister, are you feeling sick?" The concern in the child's voice was genuine. He tried to answer, but the words were lost as an excruciating pain shot through his chest like a lightning bolt. His left hand clenched, the cane slipped from his fingers, and Arthur collapsed completely onto the square's cobblestones. "Help! Somebody help!" the child screamed, her voice echoing through the stone streets. "The mister is fainting." The last words Arthur heard before losing consciousness were desperate cries for help, footsteps running in his direction, and the voice of an adult woman shouting something he couldn't fully comprehend. There was urgency, panic, and a maternal tone that stirred something deep in his memory. When he woke up, he was surrounded by the antiseptic smell of a hospital. Voices whispered around him, machines beeped constantly, and there was a strange sensation in his chest, as if something had changed inside. "Mr. Vance, can you hear me?" The voice was female, professional, with a thick New England accent. "I'm Nurse Evelyn. You had a cardiac episode in the square, but you're stable now." Arthur tried to speak, but his throat was as dry as sandpaper. The nurse must have noticed, because he soon felt a straw touching his lips. "Drink slowly. It was a child who found you passed out and screamed for help. A little girl, about 4 years old. She was very worried, wouldn't leave your side until the ambulance arrived." Where is she?" Arthur managed to murmur. "We don't know. When the ambulance arrived, she disappeared. No one could find her afterward." The nurse paused, and he heard the sound of notes being written. "Do you have any relatives we can contact?" The question brought back all the bitterness of the last 3 years. Relatives. His sister Diana had vanished with everything he owned as soon as she found out about his blindness. His business partner Bernard had taken over the company, claiming he was no longer fit to manage it. Friends had become strangers when the money ran out. "I have no one," he said, each word carrying the weight of a lifetime of loneliness. "I understand." The nurse's voice held genuine compassion. "The doctor said you'll need to stay in the hospital for a few days. Apparently, there were some complications, but nothing that can't be treated." Arthur closed his eyes, a useless gesture for someone living in perpetual darkness, and tried to process what had happened. A street child had offered him water from a fountain, spoken of miracles, and now he was hospitalized with heart problems. "Nurse Evelyn," he called out. "Yes, this girl who helped me. Did she seem to be alone in the square?" There was a pause before the answer. "From what people said, yes. She seemed to be a homeless child. Unfortunately, we have many here in Oak Creek." Her voice grew softer, almost a whisper. It's heartbreaking to see children so young abandoned to their fate. Something in the way Evelyn said those words made Arthur pay attention. There was a personal pain there, a suffering that went beyond professional compassion. "Do you have children?" he asked impulsively. The silence that followed was long and heavy with emotion. When Evelyn finally answered, her voice was choked. "I had a daughter, a 4-year-old girl." She paused, as if the next words were too difficult to say. "She disappeared a few months ago. I'm still looking for her." Arthur's heart raced. A 4-year-old girl who disappeared, and a child of the same age who had helped him in the square. Could it be possible that... What was she like? Your daughter? Small for her age, curly hair, big, expressive eyes. She was always a very bright girl, very caring towards people. Evelyn's voice trembled. She had a habit of helping everyone she saw in need. She said she wanted to be a doctor when she grew up to heal people. Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. The description perfectly matched the impression he had of the child in the square. "Nurse Evelyn, I really need to find this girl who helped me." "Why, sir? Did something happen?" Arthur hesitated. How could he explain the intuition growing inside him? How could he say that perhaps fate had brought together two people who were searching for each other without knowing it? "It's just that she might be important, very important." Just then, he heard footsteps approaching and a male voice interrupting the conversation. "Evelyn, you need to come to Ward 2. We have an emergency." "I'm on my way, doctor." She turned back to Arthur. "Sir, I have to go, but I'll be back later to check on you. Try to rest." Arthur was left alone with his turbulent thoughts and a strange feeling that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't even imagine. 3 days had passed since Arthur had been admitted, and the hospital routine had become his new temporary reality. Every morning, Evelyn arrived for her shift at 6, and he could recognize her footsteps in the hallway even before she entered his room. There was something comforting in her presence, a kindness he hadn't felt in years. "Good morning, Mr. Vance. How did you sleep?" Her voice always carried the same genuine concern. "Better, thank you. Did the doctors say anything about my discharge?" "Dr. Matthews wants to run a few more tests before releasing you. Apparently, your heart is responding well to the treatment, but he wants to be sure." Evelyn paused, and he heard the familiar sound of her checking the equipment. "Sir, may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Do you really have no family? No one to take care of you when you get out of here?" The question brought back all the bitterness Arthur carried. "I have a sister, Diana, but let's just say, we haven't been close since I lost my sight." I'm sorry to hear that. The sincerity in her voice was palpable. Family should be there in difficult times. And your family? Besides the daughter who disappeared, is there anyone else? The silence that followed was long and heavy. When Evelyn finally answered, her voice was lower. My mother's name was Clara. She passed away 2 years ago. Her voice trembled slightly. She worked as a cleaner for several companies in town. She was a very honest, hard-working woman. Arthur felt something familiar about that name but couldn't place it. And your daughter's father? He left before he even knew I was expecting Isabel. We were very young. Evelyn sighed. My mother always said he would come back one day, but that never happened. Isabel. That's a beautiful name. My mother chose it. She said it meant gift from God. She believed my daughter would be a special blessing. Evelyn's voice choked up. If only she knew how I failed to protect her. Don't say that. I'm sure you were a wonderful mother. I tried to be. I worked 3 jobs to give her everything she needed. I left her with a neighbor during the day, but I always came home at lunchtime to feed her and give her affection. The tears were audible in her voice now. The night she disappeared, I'd worked an extra shift here at the hospital. When I got home, the neighbor said Isabel had gone out to play in the square and simply didn't come back. Arthur's heart ached. Did you notify the police? Of course. But you know how it is with kids from the rough side of town. They asked a few questions, wrote everything down, but I never heard from them again. The bitterness was evident. It's as if my daughter just ceased to exist. And you've been looking for her ever since? Every day, I spend half my salary hiring people to help me search. I've covered all of Oak Creek, gone to Portsmouth, Concord, all the nearby cities. Evelyn paused. That's why when you mentioned that girl in the square, my heart leaped. Any clue, no matter how small, gives me hope. At that moment, loud voices echoed down the hospital corridor. Arthur immediately recognized the authoritarian and aggressive tone. Where is my brother? I know he's admitted here. Diana. His sister had finally shown up, and from the sound of her voice, it wasn't a friendly visit. Ma'am, please keep your voice down. This is a hospital. A receptionist's voice tried to calm the situation. Don't tell me how to talk. I want to see Arthur Vance now. Evelyn moved toward the room's door. Sir, it seems you have a visitor. Before Arthur could answer, Diana burst into the room like a storm. At 65, she maintained the same domineering personality she had always had, but now with a veneer of falsity that he could feel even without seeing. Arthur, my God, you gave me such a scare. Her voice dripped with theatrical concern. I heard you had a heart problem. Why didn't you let me know? Diana. Arthur's voice came out as cold as ice. How did you know I was here? Oh, this town is small. News travels fast. She paused, and he heard her approaching the bed. The important thing is that I'm here now to take care of you. Arthur almost laughed at the hypocrisy. Take care of me? Like you took care of my company when I lost my sight? Arthur, let's not discuss that here. Her tone shifted, becoming more defensive. You know that everything we did was for your own good. You were in no condition to manage Vance Materials. You stole everything from me, Diana. You and Bernard. We saved the company. If we hadn't taken over, you would have lost everything anyway. Her voice was getting louder again. And look where your stubbornness has brought you, living in that miserable apartment, depending on a pension. Evelyn, who had remained silent until then, cleared her throat discreetly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to check the patient's vital signs. Perhaps it would be better to continue this conversation later, when he's more rested. Diana turned to her with disdain evident in her voice. And who are you to give orders? I'm his sister. I'm the nurse responsible for Mr. Vance, and my duty is to ensure his well-being. Evelyn's voice remained professional, but Arthur detected a will of steel behind the gentleness. Diana, Arthur interrupted. What did you really come here for? There was a pause before the answer, and when it came, the tone had changed completely. Now it was calculating, direct. Bernard and I are worried about you. Living alone, without proper care, now with heart problems. She sighed dramatically. We thought it would be best if you came to live with us. We can take better care of you. And in return, well, we would need to sort out some legal matters. Permanently transfer the company's power of attorney to us. Maybe sell the apartment to cover your medical care. Her voice tried to sound casual, but Arthur knew his sister too well. Never. The word came out with a firmness that surprised even himself. Arthur, be reasonable. You no longer have the age or the condition to... I said never, Diana. You may have stolen my company, but you won't get the rest. The silence that followed was tense. Arthur heard Diana take a deep breath, trying to control her anger. Very well, but when you need help, and you will, don't come looking for me. She started toward the door, but stopped. Oh, and Arthur, Bernard sent a message. If you keep spreading lies about us, he'll take legal action. Threats now, Diana? They're not threats, they're facts. The door slammed shut as she left. Evelyn remained silent for a few minutes, probably processing what she had just witnessed. Finally, she spoke. Mr. Vance, I'm sorry you had to hear all that. It wasn't my intention to intrude. Don't apologize. You stood up for me when you didn't have to. Arthur felt a genuine gratitude. It's been a long time since anyone did that for me. Your sister, did she really do that with your company? She and my ex-partner took advantage of my blindness. They forged documents saying I was mentally incompetent, took over everything. The bitterness returned to his voice. 40 years building that company, and they destroyed it all in a matter of months. That's terrible. Is there nothing you can do? Without proof, without money for lawyers, I'm just an old blind man against two well-connected business people. Arthur sighed. Sometimes I think it would be better if... Don't say that. Evelyn's voice was firm. You're a strong man. You've survived this far. You'll keep surviving. At that moment, a soft knock on the door interrupted the conversation. A familiar, childish voice echoed through the room. Mister, is that you in there? Arthur's heart almost stopped. It was her, the girl from the square. Evelyn rushed to the door and opened it. The sound of small footsteps entered the room, followed by a voice he already knew. Hi, mister! I came to see if you're better. My God. Evelyn's voice came out as a strangled whisper. Isabel. The silence that followed was absolute, and it was then that Arthur understood that fate had finally decided to reunite two souls who had been searching for each other for too long. Time seemed to freeze in the hospital room. Evelyn was paralyzed at the door, staring at the 4-year-old girl she had desperately searched for 8 months. Isabel, in turn, looked confusedly between the woman who was crying silently and the man in the bed she had come to visit. "Mommy!" Isabel's small voice carried uncertainty. "Mommy, is that you?" Evelyn knelt on the floor, extending her trembling arms. "My daughter, my little one. Where have you been all this time?" Isabel ran into her mother's arms, but there was a hesitation in her movements, as if 8 months of life on the streets had taught her a caution she didn't have before. "I looked for you, Mommy. I looked so hard." The girl's voice was a whisper, laden with pain. "I went back to our house so many times, but you were never there." Arthur heard the muffled sound of sobs. Evelyn hugged her daughter with a desperate strength, as if fearing she might disappear again. "I never left, my love. Never. I was always waiting for you to come back." Evelyn gently pulled her daughter away, and Arthur could imagine the mother examining every detail of the child's face. "You're so thin. Where have you been living?" Isabel looked at Arthur in the bed, then back at her mother. On the street, Mommy. Sometimes I found places to sleep, sometimes people gave me food. She paused, her voice getting even lower. I was afraid to come home because the bad man said he would hurt you if I came back. What bad man? Evelyn's voice grew tense. A big man with a scar on his forehead. He showed up at our house that night you were working. He said I had to come with him, that you had sent him. Isabel shrugged. I didn't want to go, but he said you were in danger. Arthur felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Someone had deliberately separated mother and daughter. And what happened next? Asked Evelyn, her voice trembling. He took me to a dark place with other men. They kept talking about money, about someone important who would be very angry if they knew I existed. Isabel spoke with the simplicity of a child who didn't fully understand what she had been through. Then they fought among themselves, and I managed to run away when they were distracted. My God. Evelyn hugged her daughter again. Why didn't you come home after you escaped? Because the man said he knew where we lived. He said if I came back, he would hurt you. Tears began to stream down the little girl's face. I'd rather stay on the street to protect you, Mommy. The silent sacrifice of a 4-year-old child hit Arthur like a punch. A little girl had chosen to live on the streets to protect her mother from a threat she didn't even fully comprehend. Isabel, he said softly, you were very brave, but you're safe now. No one is going to hurt your mother. The girl turned to him with those big eyes he couldn't see, but could feel. Mister, are you better? Did the fountain water work? Evelyn looked confused between the two. You know each other. She's the one who helped me in the square when I fainted, Arthur explained. She gave me water from the fountain and said it would heal me. I told you it would work. Isabel clapped her hands. My grandma Clara always said the fountain in the square had special power. The name hit Arthur like a lightning bolt. Grandma Clara? Yeah, Mommy's mom. She was very good, took care of everyone. Isabel turned to Evelyn. Mommy, tell the mister about how Grandma worked for that important man. Evelyn tensed up. Isabel, you don't need to. Clara Reed, Arthur muttered, the pieces finally clicking into place in his mind. Your mother was Clara Reed. You knew her? Evelyn's voice carried a mix of surprise and apprehension. Arthur felt the weight of an old guilt crush his chest. She worked for me, Advanced Materials, for over 10 years. The silence that followed was charged with tension. Evelyn pulled Isabel closer, instinctively protective. You're Arthur Vance, she said, her voice changing tone completely. The man who accused my mother of theft and fired her without cause. Evelyn, No. Her voice cut through the air like a blade. My mother worked honestly for you for years, and when she needed a chance to defend herself against the false accusations, you just threw her out. I was deceived, Arthur said, the truth finally clear in his mind. Diana convinced me that Clara was stealing materials. She presented documents, evidence. Forged evidence. The bitterness in Evelyn's voice was sharp. My mother never stole anything in her life. She was incapable of it. I know that now. Arthur felt tears burning his blind eyes. And I also know it was your sister who set it all up. Mommy! Why are you talking so loud? Isabel looked worriedly between the two adults. Evelyn took a deep breath, trying to control herself for her daughter's sake. It's complicated, my love. Evelyn, please let me explain. Arthur struggled to sit up in bed. I made a terrible mistake with your mother, a mistake that has haunted me for 15 years. And what does that change? My mother died poor, sick, working cleaning jobs to survive after you fired her. The tears returned to Evelyn's eyes. She never got another decent job after that. Mister, Isabel approached the bed. Did you make my grandma cry? The child's innocent question was more devastating than any accusation Evelyn could make. Yes, little one, I made your grandma cry a lot. Arthur fought against his own tears, and I regret it every single day. Then you have to say you're sorry, Isabel said with the simple logic of a child. My grandma always said that when we do something wrong, we have to say we're sorry. She's right, Arthur said, turning in the direction of Evelyn's voice. Evelyn, I know I can't undo the harm I caused your mother, but I can try to make up for it somehow. We don't want anything from you. The response was cold, final. At that moment, loud voices echoed again down the hall. This time they were male voices, rough and intimidating. Where's the old man? We know he's here. Evelyn turned pale. Isabel, come here, quickly. What's happening? Arthur asked. Mommy, it's the bad man. Isabel's voice was filled with terror. He's the one who took me away. The room door burst open, and two men entered. From the sound of their heavy footsteps and the way Isabel cowered behind Evelyn, Arthur knew immediately he was in danger. Mr. Vance, a rough, threatening voice said, We need to have a little chat. Who are you? Arthur tried to keep his voice steady. Let's just say we're friends of Mr. Bernard, and he's very concerned about your recovery. The man approached the bed, so much so that he sent some documents for you to sign, for your own good, of course. Get out of here, Evelyn said, trying to shield Isabel behind her. This is a hospital, you can't. Shut up, woman, this isn't your business. The second voice was even more menacing. Unless you want the same thing that happened to your mother to happen to you. Arthur felt his blood run cold. What did you do to Clara? She asked too many questions about documents she shouldn't have seen, so we had to take some measures to make sure she didn't cause problems. The first man chuckled softly. Let's just say she had an accident at work. You killed my mother, Evelyn said, her voice trembling with anger and fear. Prove it. The answer was cold, calculating. And now, Mr. Vance, you're going to sign these papers, or your new nurse friend and her little girl are going to have the same kind of accident. Arthur understood in that moment that he was facing people willing to do anything to protect the secrets Diana and Bernard were hiding. And now Evelyn and Isabel were in danger because of him. All right, he said, trying to buy time. I'll sign, but let them leave first. No. The first man's voice was sarcastic. First you sign, then we'll see what to do with the witnesses. It was then that Isabel did something that surprised everyone in the room. The 4-year-old girl stepped out from behind her mother and faced the men with a courage that shouldn't exist in someone so small. You are bad men, she said, her small voice firm. And bad men always lose in the end. One of the men laughed. What a smart kid. Too bad. He didn't finish the sentence because at that moment the sound of sirens began to wail in the streets of Oak Creek, growing ever closer to the hospital. The sound of the sirens made the two men exchange nervous glances. The first one, who was clearly leading the pair, quickly stuffed the documents into his jacket's inner pocket. This isn't over, old man, he snarled, pointing a threatening finger at Arthur. You have 3 days to show up at the office and sign everything. 3 days, or the nurse and the girl will find out how dangerous it is to ask too many questions. They rushed out of the room, leaving behind only the echo of their threats and the smell of cheap cigarettes that clung to their clothes. Evelyn ran to the window and saw them get into a black car that sped off down a side street. Mommy, who were those men? Isabel clung to her mother's skirt, trembling. Very bad men, my love. Evelyn turned to Arthur, her expression a complex mix of fear and anger. What did they want you to sign? Arthur sighed heavily. Probably the final transfer of everything still in my name to Bernard and Diana. He paused, processing everything that had happened. But now I understand why your daughter was kidnapped. What do you mean? They found out Isabel was Clara's granddaughter, and if Clara really saw documents she shouldn't have seen before, He swallowed hard. Before her accident, then Isabel represents a threat to them. But she's just a 4-year-old child. A child who can grow up and ask questions about what happened to her grandmother. A child who might inherit any evidence Clara left behind. Arthur struggled to sit up completely in bed. "Evelyn, I need you to tell me everything about your mother's last days." Evelyn hesitated, still torn between resentment for the past and fear for the present. Finally, she pulled a chair close to the bed and sat Isabel on her lap. "In the weeks before the accident, my mother was very nervous. She said she had discovered something very serious at her job." Evelyn stroked her daughter's hair as she spoke. "She did cleaning for several offices, including your old companies." "And did she say what she had discovered?" "Fake documents, contracts signed with non-existent companies, purchases of materials that were never delivered." Evelyn looked directly at him. "She said someone was stealing a lot of money, using the Vance Materials name to do it." Arthur's stomach turned. "And did she keep copies of these documents?" "She tried, but the next day she was fired, claiming she was stealing cleaning supplies." The bitterness returned to Evelyn's voice. When she tried to explain what she'd seen, no one would listen. "And after? She got some cleaning jobs at other companies, but she never spoke about it again until a few weeks before the accident. She told me she had gotten more evidence." Evelyn paused, tears welling in her eyes. "On the morning of the accident, she was agitated, said she finally had enough proof to report everything." "And where is that proof now?" "I don't know. After the accident, I turned the whole house upside down looking for it, but I never found anything." Evelyn hugged Isabel tighter. Maybe she hid it somewhere, or maybe they found it before I did. At that moment, Dr. Matthews entered the room, looking concerned. "Mr. Vance, I've just been informed there was an uncomfortable situation here. Is everything all right?" "Doctor, I desperately need to leave the hospital today," Arthur said urgently. "It's a matter of life and death." "Sir, there are still tests I need to—" "Doctor, please. If I stay here, I'll not only be putting my life at risk, but the lives of these two as well." The doctor looked at Evelyn and Isabel, noticing their tense state. "What is going on here?" Evelyn spoke up. "Doctor, Mr. Vance is being threatened by dangerous people, and now they know my daughter and I are involved. Should I call the police?" "No!" The answer came too quickly from Arthur's mouth. "I'm sorry, Doctor, but these people have connections. Involving the police now could make everything worse." Dr. Matthews was silent for a moment, clearly processing the situation. Finally, he sighed. "Technically, I can discharge you on the condition that you rest and take your medication, but where will you stay? Your apartment certainly isn't safe." Arthur hadn't thought of that. Where could they go? He had no friends, no money for a hotel, and he certainly couldn't go back home. "You can stay at my house," Evelyn said, surprising everyone, including herself. "Evelyn, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." Her voice was firm now. "These people have already destroyed my family once. I won't let them do it again." She looked directly at Arthur. "And maybe, by working together, we can find the evidence my mother hid." An hour later, Arthur found himself outside his own neighborhood for the first time in 10 years. Evelyn had managed to get a taxi that took them to a housing project on the outskirts of Oak Creek, where she and Isabel lived in a small but tidy house. "Mommy, can I show Mr. Vance my room?" Isabel had brightened up upon arriving home, despite everything that had happened. "Of course, my love." Arthur was guided by the little girl through the modest house. By touch and sound, he could tell it was a home cared for with love, even if it was simple. "This is where I slept before I left," Isabel said, leading him to a small room with a single bed and a few shelves. "Mommy, are all my dolls still here?" "Of course they are. I haven't touched anything in your room." While Isabel explored her long-lost toys, Evelyn guided Arthur to the living room. "Mr. Vance, I need you to understand something. I'm doing this for my daughter, not for you." "I understand perfectly. And if we try to find this evidence and manage to prove what my mother discovered, I want assurances that my daughter will be safe. Evelyn, I promise I will do everything in my power to protect you both." She studied his face for a long moment. "Did you really not know the accusations against my mother were false?" Arthur bowed his head. "I was going through a very difficult time back then. Problems in my marriage, pressure at the company. Diana was always very convincing, and when she brought that evidence..." He paused. "It's not an excuse, it's just an explanation. I should have investigated further. I should have given your mother a chance to defend herself. She tried to talk to you several times. I know, and I refused to see her." The guilt was crushing his chest. "It's something I've carried for 15 years. Mister." Isabel's excited voice echoed from the bedroom. "Come here, I found something." The two of them rushed to the girl's room, where she was kneeling on the floor beside the bed, holding something small and metallic. "What did you find, my love?" Evelyn asked. "Grandma Clara's little key. She hid it here under my bed before she went to heaven." Evelyn took the small key from her daughter's hands. It was a simple golden key with a number engraved on it, 204. "Isabel, when did your grandma hide this here?" "The day she got very nervous. She said if something bad happened to her, I had to give this key to someone I trust." The girl looked at Arthur. "I think she wanted me to give it to you, mister." Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. "Evelyn, this key looks like it's for a safe deposit box," she completed, examining the object. "Number 204. At that moment, the house phone rang. Evelyn answered hesitantly. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was cold, threatening, loud enough for Arthur to hear. "We know where you are. And we know the child found something she shouldn't have. You have until noon tomorrow to hand everything over and disappear from town. Otherwise, you'll find out that accidents can happen to anyone, anywhere." The call ended, leaving only the sound of a dial tone and the echo of a threat that chilled the blood of everyone in the small house. The night was sleepless in Evelyn's small house. Arthur remained seated in the living room, holding the golden key between his fingers, while Evelyn made coffee for the third time since midnight. Isabel had finally fallen asleep on the sofa, exhausted by the day's tension. "We need to go to the bank as soon as it opens," Evelyn murmured, pouring another cup for Arthur. "If this key really is for what we think, it could be our only chance to prove the truth about what happened to your mother," he completed. "But it could also be a trap. If they know about the key, they can't know. Isabel was just a baby when my mother hid it, and even if they did, they wouldn't know which bank the box is in." Arthur nodded, but a worry gnawed at him. "Evelyn, if we go to the bank and find evidence, they'll know we have proof against them. That will make us even more dangerous to them. And if we don't go, we'll spend the rest of our lives on the run." Her voice was firm, determined. "My daughter deserves to grow up without fear." At 6 in the morning, Evelyn gently woke Isabel. The girl was calmer but still startled at any unusual noise. "Mommy, are we leaving the house again?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. "We're just going to take care of something important, my love. Then we can live in peace." "And is the mister going to stay with us?" Evelyn looked at Arthur, who was sitting near the window. "That's a decision we haven't made yet, Isabel." "I'd like him to stay," the girl said simply. "He's nice, and he needs someone to take care of him." "Could he—" The child's innocent observation touched something deep in Arthur's heart. For years, no one had cared if he needed looking after. At 8 o'clock, they left the house carefully, Evelyn carrying a bag with documents and Arthur leaning on his cane. Isabel held both of their hands, forming a small human chain. The Bank of America in Oak Creek was on the main street. An old but well-maintained building. Evelyn guided them to the entrance, her eyes constantly checking if they were being followed. "Good morning," she said to the security guard at the entrance. "We need to access a safe deposit box." "Do you have the documentation, ma'am?" Evelyn showed her IDs and explained that she was the daughter of Clara Reed, deceased for 2 years. The process took longer than they expected, with several calls and verifications. "Box 204 is indeed registered in the name of Clara Reed," the manager confirmed after almost an hour. "But to access it, we need the estate inventory documents and—" "Please," Evelyn interrupted. "My mother left me the key. She must have left instructions for me to access it in case of an emergency." The manager checked the system again. "There's a note here. In case of death, allow access to daughter Evelyn Reed upon presentation of death certificate and identification." He looked at her. "Your mother was very thorough." 15 minutes later, they were in the vault room. Evelyn inserted the golden key into box 204, her hands trembling slightly. When the small door opened, it revealed a sealed manila envelope and a small wooden box. "Is that all?" Arthur asked. "It seems so." Evelyn carefully picked up the 2 items. "Let's open them at home. It's not safe here." But as they left the bank, they realized they were not alone. The same black car from yesterday was parked across the street, with 2 men watching their every move. "Evelyn," Arthur whispered, "we need to get out of here now." She glanced discreetly and saw the car. Her heart pounded. "Isabel, we're going to walk very slowly to the corner, like we're going for a stroll." They started walking down the sidewalk, but the car started and began to follow them slowly. When they reached the corner, Evelyn made a quick decision. "This way," she said, ducking into a narrow alley between 2 old shops. The alley led to a small back lane that connected several streets in Oak Creek's historic center. Evelyn knew these paths well from growing up in the town. "Where are we going?" Arthur asked, his cane tapping on the uneven ground. "To my friend Rose's house. She lives near the church, and they won't look for us there." They walked for 20 minutes through back streets until they reached a small, blue-painted house with a garden full of flowers out front. Rose, a middle-aged woman with graying hair, opened the door before they even knocked. "Evelyn! You gave me such a scare when you called yesterday." She hugged her friend warmly. "And this must be Isabel! My goodness, how she's grown!" "Rose, we need a safe place to open this," Evelyn said, showing the envelope and the box. "Of course, dear. Come on into the kitchen." Rose's kitchen was cozy, with a large wooden table and windows overlooking a small but well-kept backyard. Evelyn placed the items on the table while Isabel played with a cat that had appeared out of nowhere. "I'll open the envelope first," Evelyn said, her hands still shaking. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter and several copies of documents. Evelyn read the letter aloud. "My dear Evelyn, if you are reading this, it means something has happened to me and you needed to access this box. The documents here prove that Bernard Miles and Diana Vance have been stealing money from Vance Materials for over 5 years. They created shell companies, forged contracts, and embezzled more than $5 million. Arthur felt his blood run cold. $5 million. His company had been systematically plundered for years. Evelyn continued reading. "I also discovered that they were responsible for the death of Theodore Vance. It wasn't an accident, as they said. He had discovered the scheme and was about to report it when they sabotaged his car." The silence that followed was absolute. Theodore was Arthur's son, who had died in a car accident 5 years ago. The pain of that loss had been devastating, contributing to the deterioration of his health and his marriage. "My son!" Arthur's voice came out as a strangled whisper. They killed my son. There's more, Evelyn said, returning to the letter. Bernard discovered that Theodore had a daughter, but I managed to keep the identity of the mother and child a secret. If anything happens to me, take good care of little Isabel. She is Arthur Vance's granddaughter and may be the key to revealing the whole truth. Rose let out a gasp of surprise. Arthur was in absolute shock, processing the information that Isabel was his granddaughter. That means, he began, that Theodore was Isabel's father, Evelyn completed, tears streaming down her face. He never knew. He was gone before I even found out I was pregnant. Mummy, why are you crying? Isabel approached, concerned. Arthur extended his trembling arms in the direction of the girl's voice. Come here, little one. Isabel came closer, and he pulled her into a desperate hug. His granddaughter, the daughter of the son he had lost, was here, alive, real, in his arms. You are my real family, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. My little granddaughter. And you're my grandpa, Isabel asked with the simplicity of children. I am, my love. I'm your grandpa. Evelyn opened the wooden box with trembling hands. Inside were more documents, a flash drive, and a photo. The photo showed Theodore and Evelyn together, she clearly pregnant, smiling at the camera. He was a good man, she said, touching the photo fondly. When I found out I was pregnant, I tried to find him, but they told me he had traveled for business and had an accident. They lied, Arthur said, anger growing in his voice. They killed my son to protect their secrets. Rose, who had been following everything in silence, finally spoke. Folks, you need to take this to the police right now. We can't, Evelyn said. They have connections. We need something more. At that moment, Rose's phone rang. She answered hesitantly. Rose, someone is asking if you've seen a woman with a child and a blind man passing by your street, a neighbor's voice said. It's two men in a black car. They said they're relatives looking for them. Rose looked at the group in her kitchen. I haven't seen anyone, Lucy. Thanks for letting me know. They've found us, Arthur said. We need to get out of here. To where? Evelyn asked. To Boston. I can find a lawyer I know there, someone I trust. Arthur held Isabel's hand, and this time we're going to end this once and for all. Rose moved to the front window of the house. The black car is parked at the corner. They're waiting for you to leave. Then we'll have to find another way out of town, Evelyn said, carefully putting all the documents in her bag. I know a way, Rose said with a conspiratorial smile. My brother-in-law has a delivery van. He can take you to Boston without anyone suspecting. While Rose made the call, Arthur held his granddaughter in his lap, still processing the discovery that he had a family again. But now that family was in mortal danger, and he had to protect them. The final battle against Diana and Bernard was just beginning. The light blue delivery van belonging to Joe, Rose's brother-in-law, was parked in the back of the house, hidden by a makeshift garage covered with corrugated tin. The vehicle was loaded with crates of fruits and vegetables to be delivered to Boston's Central Market. You'll have to hide behind the crates, explained Joe, a man in his 50s with a prominent belly and a kind smile. It's not comfortable, but it's safe. I've made this trip 3 times a week for 10 years, never had a problem. Arthur held Isabel in his lap, while Evelyn organized the documents in a waterproof folder that Rose had found. The girl watched everything with curiosity, not fully understanding the gravity of the situation. Grandpa, are we going on an adventure trip? She asked, her eyes shining with the innocence typical of her age. That's right, my love, a great adventure. Arthur kissed his granddaughter's forehead, feeling a mix of love and terror for what was to come. Joe discreetly checked for any suspicious movement on the street. It's clear. Let's go. They settled in the back of the van, between crates of tomatoes and lettuce. The smell of fresh vegetables, mixed with the odor of gasoline, created a stuffy but comforting atmosphere. Isabel snuggled between Arthur and Evelyn, holding a doll that Rose had given her as a gift for the trip. The van started smoothly, and through the gaps between the crates, Evelyn could see the Oak Creek landscape slowly passing by. When they passed the main street, she noticed the black car still parked near the bank. "They're still looking," she whispered to Arthur. "Soon they won't find anything left to look for," he replied, clutching the folder with the documents against his chest. The trip to Boston would take about 2 hours on the back roads that Joe knew. During the journey, Isabel fell asleep in her grandfather's lap, and Evelyn took the opportunity to talk quietly with Arthur about what they would do when they arrived in the capital. "Mr. Carver has been my lawyer for 20 years, Arthur explained. "If anyone can help us use this evidence the right way, it's him. And what if he doesn't believe our story? He will. He knows my character and knows that Bernard was always too ambitious." Arthur paused, stroking Isabel's hair. "Besides, we have proof now." When they reached the outskirts of Boston, Joe stopped at a gas station for a strategic break. "I'll call Mr. Carver from here," Arthur said. "Better to let him know we're coming." The call was answered quickly. "Arthur, what a surprise. How are you?" "Mr. Carver, I desperately need your help. It's an emergency." "Of course, my friend. What happened?" Arthur quickly explained the situation, omitting some details over the phone. The lawyer agreed to see them immediately in his downtown office. An hour later, they were sitting in the spacious and elegant law office. Mr. Carver, a man in his 60s with white hair and reading glasses, carefully examined each document while Evelyn told the full story. "This is extremely serious, Arthur," the lawyer said, lifting his glasses. "If this evidence is authentic, and from what I see here, it appears to be, we are talking about crimes that include embezzlement, document forgery, and—" He hesitated, looking at Isabel, who was playing quietly in the corner of the room. "Homicide." Can you help us take this forward?" Evelyn asked. "I can and I will, but you need to understand that it will be a long and dangerous process." Mr. Carver leaned back in his chair. "Bernard and Diana will not accept this passively. They have resources and connections." "They also have a lot to lose," Arthur observed. $5 million and their reputation." "Exactly. That's why they're dangerous." The lawyer picked up the phone. "I'm going to call a contact of mine in the district attorney's office. We need to do this officially, with proper protection." While Mr. Carver made the necessary calls, Evelyn took Isabel to the reception to get some water. The girl was tired from the trip and was starting to get fussy. "Mommy, when are we going back home?" she asked. "Soon, my love. We just need to take care of these important things first." "Is it about Grandma Clara?" "It is. We're trying to get justice for what happened to her." Isabel was thoughtful for a moment. "Mummy, I remember something about Grandma." "What do you remember?" "She showed me where she hid something very important. She said that if I ever grew up and bad people came after us, I had to remember the place." Evelyn knelt in front of her daughter. "What place, Isabel?" "At the church. Grandma hid something in the church where she prayed every Sunday." Evelyn's heart raced. "Which church, my love?" "The little church near our house, the one with the saint she really liked." Evelyn knew the St. Benedict Chapel well, where her mother indeed went every Sunday. It was a simple building, mainly frequented by the older residents of the neighborhood. She ran back to Mr. Carver's office, who had finished his calls. "Sir, my daughter just remembered something important. My mother may have hidden more evidence in the St. Benedict Chapel in Oak Creek." "That complicates things," the lawyer said. "You can't go back to Oak Creek now. It's too dangerous." "Then we send someone to get it," Arthur suggested. "Let me make some calls first. I have a private investigator who has worked with me for years. He can go there discreetly." At that moment, Mr. Carver's secretary entered the room with a worried expression. "Sir, there are 2 men downstairs asking if Mr. Arthur Vance came here today. They said they are family and are worried about him." Arthur and Evelyn looked at each other. They had been found again. "How did they find out?" Evelyn murmured. "They probably traced our call or have informants," Mr. Carver replied, standing up quickly. "Come on, let's use the back exit." They hurried to the building's service elevator. Mr. Carver accompanied them, carrying a briefcase with copies of all the documents. "You'll stay at my apartment tonight," he said as they descended. "First thing tomorrow morning, we're going to the DA's office to file the formal complaint." The elevator stopped in the building's basement, where the garage was located. The lawyer guided them to his car, a discreet black sedan. "Lie down in the back seat until we're out of here," he instructed. As the car exited the garage, Evelyn could see through the rear window the two men from yesterday talking to the building's doorman. One of them was pointing in the direction of the car, and she was sure they had been seen. "Sir, they saw us," she said, trying to keep her voice calm so as not to scare Isabel. "Don't worry. I know these streets like the back of my hand." Mr. Carver made several maneuvers through back streets, ducking in and out of parking lots until he was sure they weren't being followed. Finally, they arrived at an elegant residential building in Beacon Hill. The lawyer's apartment was spacious and comfortable, with a panoramic view of the city. Isabel was fascinated by the paintings on the walls, and especially by a large aquarium full of colorful fish. "Make yourselves at home," Mr. Carver said. "My wife is traveling, so you have the place to yourselves tonight." While Isabel played with the fish, the adults gathered in the living room to plan their next steps. "Tomorrow at 8 in the morning, I have a meeting scheduled with DA Henry Diaz. He's a man of integrity and has experience with corruption cases," the lawyer explained. "And what about the evidence that might be in the chapel?" Arthur asked. "My investigator, Sebastian, will go there today. If there's anything hidden, he'll find it." At that moment, Mr. Carver's phone rang. It was a call that would change everything again. "Mr. Carver, this is Sebastian. I'm in Oak Creek at the chapel you mentioned." His voice sounded tense through the speakerphone. "I found what I was looking for, but we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The chapel is being watched. There are 2 cars with armed men waiting for someone to show up. And, sir," he paused, "I just saw Bernard Miles arriving here in person." The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Bernard had found out about the second piece of evidence and was personally supervising the operation to prevent it from reaching the right hands. "Sebastian, get out of there immediately," Mr. Carver ordered. "I can't, sir. I've already managed to grab what was hidden, but I'm surrounded." The call cut off abruptly, leaving only the sound of a dead line and the certainty that the situation had become even more dangerous. 2 hours passed with no news from Sebastian. Mr. Carver had tried calling several times, but the investigator's phone went straight to voicemail. Arthur paced nervously around the apartment living room while Evelyn tried to keep Isabel distracted with drawings and children's books. "Sir, we can't just sit here waiting," Arthur said, stopping near the window. "If something happened to Sebastian—" "I know, Arthur, but leaving here now would be suicide." The lawyer massaged his temples, clearly worried. "Bernard is playing hardball, much harder than we imagined." Just then, the phone rang. Mr. Carver answered quickly. "Sebastian, thank God." "Sir, I managed to escape." But it was a close call. The investigator's voice sounded breathless, as if he had been running a lot. "I'm in a neighboring town now, in a safe location." "And the evidence?" "I managed to get everything before they surrounded me." Clara Reed was indeed very clever. She hid a flash drive inside a statue of Saint Benedict. Sebastian paused to catch his breath. "But sir, this is much worse than you imagine." "What do you mean?" "The information on the flash drive shows that the scheme doesn't just involve Vance Materials. Bernard is in partnership with businessmen from several cities in the region. It's a corruption network that moves tens of millions." Arthur's blood ran cold. "Sebastian, are you saying my company was just part of something bigger?" Exactly. Mr. Vance, and there's more. There are records of payments to local authorities, judges, prosecutors. His voice grew lower. That's why they're willing to do anything to stop this from coming out. Mr. Carver stood up from his chair, starting to pace the room. Sebastian, where are you exactly? In Concord, but I won't stay here long. They have men in all the nearby towns. He paused again. Sir, there's something I need to tell you. When I was leaving the chapel, I overheard Bernard on the phone. What did he say? That they're going to accelerate their plans. He mentioned something about transferring all the money out of the country tonight. Sebastian took a deep breath, and I heard him give the order to definitively solve the family problem. Evelyn pulled Isabel closer to her, instinctively protective. The girl sensed the tension in the air, even without fully understanding what was happening. Grandpa, why is everyone so worried? She asked, looking up at Arthur with her big eyes. It's just grown-up stuff, my love. Everything will be okay soon. Mr. Carver returned to the phone. Sebastian, I need you to come to Boston as quickly as possible, but be careful on the road. I'm already on my way, sir. Should be there in 2 hours. After the call ended, the lawyer addressed Arthur and Evelyn with a grave expression. The situation has changed completely. We can no longer wait until morning to go to the DA's office. I need to call DA Diaz now, even if it's after business hours. While Mr. Carver made the call, Evelyn approached Arthur. Arthur, I'm scared, she whispered. If they're willing to kill to protect their secrets, they won't be able to reach us, Evelyn. We have the evidence now, and we have honest people helping us. And what if that's not enough? Arthur held her hands firmly. It will be enough. It has to be. My granddaughter will not grow up in fear like you did. Mr. Carver's call was successful. DA Henry Diaz agreed to meet them at his office that very night, despite the unusual hour. He said that if the evidence is really what it appears to be, he will authorize preventive arrests tonight, the lawyer explained. And our protection? Evelyn asked. He will arrange for a police escort until this is all resolved. At 8 in the evening, Sebastian finally arrived at the apartment. He was a thin man in his late 40s with wrinkled clothes and a tense expression. He carried a leather briefcase that he protected as if it were a treasure. Here is the evidence from the chapel, he said, handing the briefcase to Mr. Carver. And I can confirm what's on this flash drive is enough to bring down not only Bernard and Diana, but at least 10 other important people in the region. Mr. Carver connected the flash drive to his laptop. Files upon files of documents, spreadsheets, and audio recordings appeared on the screen. My God, he murmured, examining the data. Clara documented everything, every transaction, every meeting, every illegal payment. She was truly a brave woman, Arthur said, thinking of the employee he had unjustly fired. Brave and intelligent, Sebastian added. These files are organized chronologically and have backups of everything. She knew exactly what she was doing. At that moment, Isabel approached the group, carrying the drawing she had made during the afternoon. Grandpa, I made a drawing for you, she said, holding out the paper. Arthur took the drawing, running his fingers over the paper. Tell me what you drew, my love. It's our family, you, me, and Mommy. And Grandma Clara is up there, in heaven, watching over us. Isabel pointed to different parts of the drawing, and down here are the bad men going away because they can't hurt anyone anymore. The child's innocent words deeply touched all the adults in the room. There was a simple wisdom there, a faith that everything would work out in the end. It's a beautiful drawing, Isabel, Mr. Carver said, smiling for the first time in hours. At 9 o'clock, they headed to DA Henry Diaz's office. The district attorney's building was practically empty, illuminated only by emergency lights and the DA's office on the 10th floor. Henry Diaz was a man in his 50s, serious but with kind eyes. He listened to the entire story in silence, examining each document and file with meticulous attention. This is extraordinary, he said finally. In 20 years of my career, I have rarely seen evidence so complete and well documented. He turned to Evelyn. Your mother did a job that few professional investigators could have done. She was always very observant, Evelyn replied, proud. And courageous to the end, the DA added. This evidence not only proves the crimes against the Vance Company, but reveals a network of corruption that reaches several city governments in the region. Arthur leaned forward. DA, when can we be sure that my family will be safe? I will issue preventive arrest warrants tonight. Bernard, Diana, and at least 6 other people will be arrested before dawn. Henry picked up the phone. And I will arrange police protection for you until everything is resolved. 2 hours later, while Isabel slept on the waiting room sofa, the first news arrived. Bernard had been arrested at his mansion on the outskirts of Oak Creek, trying to destroy documents in a bonfire in the backyard. And Diana? Arthur asked. We're still looking for her. It seems she was tipped off and tried to flee, the DA replied. But she won't get far. We've already frozen her accounts and issued an alert at the airports. Sebastian approached the group. DA, I just got a call from my contact in Oak Creek. Diana was seen at the bus station trying to buy a ticket to New York. I'll call the state police right now, Henry said, grabbing the phone again. As the arrests took place, Arthur felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Justice was being served, but the price had been far too high. His son was dead, Clara had been murdered, and a 4-year-old child had lived on the streets for months to protect her mother. Evelyn, he said softly, when all this is over, I want you and Isabel to come live with me. Arthur, please, you are my family now. And I need to make up for all the suffering I've caused. He held her hand. I want Isabel to grow up knowing the father she never had a chance to know. And I want to be the grandfather she deserves. Evelyn looked at her sleeping daughter, then at this man who had gone from stranger to enemy and finally to family in a matter of days. Let's see how everything turns out, she said softly. But yes, I think we can try. At that moment, the DA's phone rang. He answered quickly, and after a few minutes hung up with a satisfied smile. Diana was arrested at the bus station in Concord. She was carrying a suitcase with over $500,000 in cash. He looked at the group. It's over. All the main players are in custody. But even with the news of the arrest, Arthur couldn't shake a strange feeling, as if something important was still to happen. And his intuition was right. The most surprising part was yet to come. 3 weeks had passed since the arrests. Arthur, Evelyn, and Isabel were temporarily staying in a discreet hotel in Boston under police protection while the lawyers worked to recover the stolen assets and organize the necessary paperwork for their return to a normal life. Tuesday morning brought news that changed everything again. Mr. Carver arrived at the hotel with an expression that mixed surprise and concern. Arthur, we have important developments, he said, sitting down in the small living room of their suite. Bernard has decided to take a plea deal. What does that mean? Asked Evelyn, who was preparing breakfast for Isabel. It means he's willing to give up everyone involved in the corruption network in exchange for a reduced sentence. The lawyer opened his briefcase. But the information he revealed, well, there's something you need to know. Arthur felt a cold pit in his stomach. What did he say? About Theodore's death. Apparently it wasn't Bernard who planned the murder. Mr. Carver paused, clearly uncomfortable. It was Diana. She found out that Theodore was investigating the irregularities and took the initiative. My sister killed my son. Arthur's voice came out as a strangled whisper. According to Bernard, yes, and there's more. Diana was also the one who ordered Clara's death when she found out she had evidence that could incriminate them. The lawyer took a deep breath. Bernard claims he was just following orders. that Diana was the true leader of the scheme. Evelyn sat down heavily in a chair, the weight of the revelation hitting her like a sledgehammer. She killed my mother and your son, and still managed to convince you that my mother was a thief. Diana was always manipulative, Arthur murmured, memories of their childhood flooding his mind. Ever since she was little, she could convince anyone of anything. Grandpa, why are you sad? Isabel approached, carrying the doll that had become her inseparable companion. Arthur picked her up, trying to find words suitable for a 4-year-old. We're finding out things about people who did very bad things, my love. The mean auntie who took me away from Mommy? Not exactly her, the people. He kissed his granddaughter's forehead, but the important thing is that now we're all together and safe. Mr. Carver continued his explanation. There's also good news. With Bernard's confessions and the evidence we have, the court has authorized the freezing and recovery of all embezzled assets. What does that mean in practical terms? Asked Evelyn. It means that Vance Materials can be rebuilt and that there are sufficient financial resources to compensate for all the losses of the past few years. The lawyer smiled. Arthur, you can restart your life with dignity. And Evelyn and Isabel, as family members of the victims, you also have the right to compensation. Clara was murdered for trying to protect the truth, and Evelyn lost years of work and suffered trauma because of the crimes. At that moment, the room's phone rang. It was the front desk informing them they had a visitor. We're not expecting anyone, Evelyn said, immediately tense. Calm down, Mr. Carver said. Hotel security is briefed. I'll go down and check. 15 minutes later, he returned accompanied by an elegantly dressed woman in her 50s with graying hair and kind eyes. This is Marion Vance, Theodore's aunt and Isabel's great-aunt, the lawyer introduced. Arthur was in shock. Marion? But you've been living in New York for 20 years. I heard about the arrests in the news and came immediately. She looked at Evelyn with affection. And I especially came to meet my great-niece. Marion knelt in front of Isabel, who watched everything with curiosity. Hi, Isabel. I'm your daddy's aunt. That makes me your great-auntie. My daddy who went to heaven, the girl asked. That's right, and he's very proud of you up there. Evelyn approached cautiously. Throughout her pregnancy and Isabel's early years, she had wondered about the child's father's family. Marion, why did you never try to find us? Because I never knew you existed, she replied with tears in her eyes. Theodore was always traveling for work, never talked about relationships. When he died, we found nothing in his belongings to indicate he had a girlfriend or a daughter. He was probably trying to protect you, Mr. Carver observed. If he suspected he was being watched because of the investigations. That makes sense, Marion agreed. My brother was always very protective of the people he loved. Over the next few hours, Marion told stories about Theodore that Evelyn had never heard. How he was affectionate with children, how he always talked about having a family, how honest and upstanding he was in business. He would have been a wonderful father, Marion said, watching Isabel play. And this girl has his exact smile. Auntie, can you tell me stories about my daddy? Isabel asked, climbing onto Marion's lap. Of course I can, my love. Your daddy was a very special man. While Marion entertained Isabel with stories, Arthur and Evelyn talked on the apartment's balcony. I'm trying to process all of this, Evelyn said. In 3 weeks, my life has changed completely. I found out who killed my mother, found a family I didn't know existed, and now... And now you can start over, Arthur completed. We can start over as a real family. Arthur, there's something I need to tell you. Evelyn hesitated. When I found out Theodore had died, I was angry. Angry at him for leaving me alone, angry at life for being unfair. She paused. And for all these years, a part of me blamed you too, for being his father and not protecting my son. You had a right to be angry, he said softly. I failed as a father. I was so focused on business that I didn't pay attention to the signs that Theodore was in danger. But now I understand that you were a victim too. Diana manipulated all of us. At that moment, Mr. Carver joined them on the balcony. I just received a call from D.A. Diaz. Diana wants to talk to you. Talk to us? Arthur frowned. Why? Apparently, she wants to make a full confession, but only if she speaks directly with you and Evelyn. I don't want to see her, Evelyn said immediately. Neither do I, Arthur agreed. That woman destroyed our family twice. I understand your feelings, the lawyer said, but perhaps it's important to hear what she has to say. It could be our chance to fully understand what happened. What if it's just another one of her manipulations? And the meeting would be at the prison, with lawyers and authorities present. She can't do anything to harm you. Evelyn looked at Arthur. What do you think? I think I deserve to hear from her own mouth why she killed my son, he said, his voice laden with pain and restrained anger. Then let's go. The next day, they headed to the penitentiary complex where Diana was being held. The environment was cold and intimidating, with armed guards and strict security protocols. Diana was different from the arrogant woman who had visited Arthur in the hospital. She seemed to have aged 10 years in 3 weeks, with disheveled hair and eyes that had lost all their former malice. Arthur, she said when she saw them enter the visiting room, thank you for coming. We didn't come here for you, Diana. We came for ourselves, he replied coldly. Diana nodded, understanding. I deserved this. I deserved all of it. She looked at Evelyn. And you have every right to hate me. I destroyed your life and your mother's life. Why? Evelyn's question came out heavy with pain. Why did you kill innocent people? Because I was afraid, Diana answered, tears beginning to stream down her face. Afraid of losing what I had achieved. Afraid of being poor again, afraid that people would find out I wasn't as smart as I pretended to be. Theodore was your nephew, Arthur said, his voice trembling with emotion. He was your own blood. I know, and I regret it every day. Diana covered her face with her hands. When he started asking questions about the company, I tried to convince him to stop, but he was stubborn, just like his father. And you decided to kill him. I panicked. Bernard said that if Theodore found out everything, we would all go to jail, and I... She paused, sobbing, and I chose to save my own skin. The silence in the room was heavy. Finally, Diana lifted her face and looked directly at Arthur. Brother, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that for all these years, I've been tormented by what I did. And when I found out about Isabel's existence, I tried to protect her by keeping my distance. Protect her? You ordered her kidnapping? No! The response came out explosively. I never ordered any kidnapping. When Bernard found out that Clara had a granddaughter, he took the initiative on his own. I only found out later. Evelyn leaned forward. Then why didn't you stop him? Because I'm a coward, Diana admitted. I always have been. Since we were kids, I always let others make the hard decisions for me. The confession continued for another hour, with Diana revealing details about how she had forged the evidence against Clara, how she had manipulated Arthur for years, and how the weight of guilt had become unbearable. When they left the prison, Arthur and Evelyn walked in silence to the car. Finally, Evelyn spoke. I don't know if I feel better or worse after hearing all that. I know how I feel, Arthur said, free. For the first time in years, I feel like I can move on. And it was true. The weight of guilt and resentment he had carried for so long had finally dissipated, leaving room for something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. 2 months later, Arthur stood in his old company, now fully renovated and reorganized. Vance Materials had risen from the ashes with a completely new and transparent management. The smell of fresh paint filled the air, symbolizing the fresh start they all so desperately needed. "Daddy Arthur, can I play in your office?" Isabel ran through the company's hallways with the typical energy of a 4-year-old who had finally found stability. "Of course, my love, but be careful with the important papers," he replied, smiling as he heard his granddaughter's little footsteps echoing through the building. Evelyn approached, carrying a folder with the new contracts that were being signed. In the past few months, she had become not only part of the family, but also a minority partner in the rebuilt company. "The suppliers from New York confirmed the delivery for next week," she said, organizing the documents on the table. "And the construction company from Concord wants to sign an annual contract with us." "Excellent. In 6 months, we've managed to win back more than half of our old clients," Arthur said, still impressed with the speed of the recovery. Marion entered the office, bringing fresh coffee and homemade cookies that had become her specialty since she decided to move from New York to be near her rebuilt family. "Isabel, honey, come have a snack," she called, and the girl came running, carrying a new drawing. "Auntie, I drew our company!" Isabel proudly showed a colorful paper where a building was surrounded by smiling people. "It's beautiful, my love." "And who are these people in the drawing?" "It's Grandpa Arthur working, Mummy helping, you cooking, and me growing up to work here too when I'm big." The 3 adults laughed, touched by the child's simplicity and optimism. It was amazing how Isabel had adapted to her new life, as if the difficult months had been just a distant nightmare. "By the way," Marion said, "I received an interesting call today." "From whom?" asked Evelyn. "From the director of the hospital where Arthur was admitted. They want to hold a tribute for Clara Reed." "A tribute?" Arthur was interested. "Apparently, after the whole story came to light, they discovered that Clara had reported several irregularities at the hospital over the years, reports that were ignored at the time but have now proven crucial for improving the institution's management." Evelyn felt her eyes fill with tears. "My mother was always a just person. Even knowing she could get hurt, she never stayed silent in the face of wrongdoing. And now they want to name the pediatric wing after her," Marion continued. "The Clara Reed Pediatric Wing." "That's wonderful," Arthur said, moved. "Clara deserves to be remembered as the hero she was." At that moment, the company's phone rang. It was Mr. Carver, with news about the legal proceedings. "Arthur, I have an important update," the lawyer said. "Bernard was sentenced to 15 years in prison, and Diana got 22 years for aggravated homicide. And the others involved. All convicted. The corruption network has been completely dismantled." Mr. Carver paused. "But there's something more important I need to tell you." "What is it?" "Remember Bernard mentioned there was money hidden abroad? Well, we managed to track and recover almost all of it. It's another $3 million that were in Swiss accounts." $3 million. Arthur could hardly believe what he was hearing. "And according to the court's decision, half goes to you as compensation for the damages to the company, and the other half will be divided between Evelyn and the other victims of the scheme." After the call ended, Arthur sat in his chair, trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. In a few months, he had gone from a blind, lonely, and hopeless man to someone with a loving family and the resources to completely rebuild his life. "Evelyn," he said, turning to her, "I need to ask you an important question." "What question?" "Will you marry me?" The question caught Evelyn completely off guard. She stopped organizing the papers and looked directly at him. "Arthur, we have a deep connection now, but marriage. I know it might seem strange, but during these months, I've realized that you and Isabel have become the most important people in my life." He stood up and walked over to her. "I'm not talking about romantic love. I'm talking about a family commitment, about taking care of each other, about raising Isabel together." Marion, who had been listening discreetly, approached. "Evelyn, can I give my opinion?" "Of course. You are already a family, in fact. You live together, work together, care for each other. Marriage would just be making official what already exists." Isabel, who had sensed the seriousness of the conversation, approached the adults. "Mummy, does Grandpa Arthur want to be your husband?" "That's right, my love. Does that mean he'll be my real daddy?" Evelyn knelt to her daughter's height. "He's already your real grandpa, Isabel, but if I marry him, he'll also become your stepfather." "I want that!" The girl's response came without hesitation. "I want us to be a real family on paper, too." Evelyn looked at Arthur, then at Marion, and finally at her daughter. All the important people in her life were there, supporting the decision. "All right," she said, smiling. "Yes, I'll marry you." The rest of the afternoon was a spontaneous celebration. Marion rushed to buy a cake, Isabel made wedding drawings, and Arthur called Mr. Carver to share the news. 3 weeks later, they were married in a simple ceremony at the St. Benedict Chapel, the same one where Clara had hidden the evidence that changed everything. The small church was decorated with white and yellow flowers, and the few guests included Mr. Carver, D.A. Diaz, Sebastian, Rose, and a few employees from the new company. Isabel was the flower girl, wearing a yellow dress that Marion had sewn especially for the occasion. During the ceremony, when the priest asked if there were any objections, she shouted in her childish voice, "There's nothing. They can get married." Everyone laughed, and the priest, an elderly man who knew the family story well, smiled emotionally. "Arthur Vance," he said, "do you take Evelyn Reed to be your wife? To love and to cherish, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." "Evelyn Reed, do you take Arthur Vance to be your husband, to love and to cherish, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." When they exchanged the simple rings they had chosen, Arthur felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace. It wasn't just the end of a nightmare, it was the true beginning of a new life. After the ceremony, there was a small party at the company itself, which had become more of a home than a workplace. Marion had prepared a feast of home-cooked dishes, and Isabel ran among the guests, telling everyone that she now had a new daddy and a giant family. During the party, Mr. Carver approached the couple. "Arthur, Evelyn, I have one last surprise for you." "What is it?" asked Evelyn. "Remember the house where you used to live, Evelyn? The house you had to abandon when you fled?" "Of course. Well, we discovered that it was being used by Bernard to store false documents. As part of the reparation, the court has ordered that the house be officially transferred to Isabel's name." "The house is mine?" asked the girl, who had overheard the conversation. "It's yours, my love, and when you grow up, you can decide what to do with it." Isabel thought for a moment, then said with the seriousness only children possess, "I'm going to turn it into a house for kids who don't have a family, just like I didn't before." The declaration deeply touched everyone present. Even at 4, Isabel already showed the generosity and sense of justice she had inherited from her grandmother Clara. When the party ended and everyone had gone home, the new family gathered in the living room of the house they now officially shared. Arthur was on the sofa with Isabel, sleeping in his lap, while Evelyn organized the gifts they had received. "Evelyn," he said softly, so as not to wake the girl, "thank you." "For what?" "For giving me a second chance. For forgiving my past mistakes. For allowing me to be part of your family. Arthur, we're the ones who should thank you. You gave us security, dignity, a future. We gave that to each other." As they talked, Isabel stirred in her grandfather's lap and murmured something in her sleep. Arthur could hear it clearly. "Thank you, Grandma Clara, for watching over us from heaven." It was as if the girl knew, even in her sleep, that all of this had been possible thanks to the courage of a woman who had risked everything to protect the truth and her family. That night, for the first time in years, Arthur slept in complete peace, knowing that he had found not just a family, but a reason to live that went far beyond any business or material wealth. 6 months after the wedding, life had settled into a happy and productive routine. Vance Materials was thriving beyond all expectations, with contracts in 5 cities in the region. Isabel, now 5, was attending a private school where she excelled in her intelligence and her ease in making friends. On that September morning, Arthur was in his office when he received a call that would once again change the course of their lives. "Mr. Vance, this is Dr. Marina from the University Hospital in Boston," said a professional female voice. "Yes, doctor." "Sir, we have an experimental treatment for vision restoration that might interest you. It's a new procedure with promising results in cases of blindness caused by stroke." Arthur's heart raced. "How did you know about my case?" "Dr. Matthews, who treated you in Oak Creek, referred you. He's been following your progress and believes you would be a good candidate for the treatment." "And what are the chances of success? In patients with your profile, we have achieved partial vision recovery in 60% of cases. It's not a total cure, but it can restore significant autonomy." When Evelyn arrived for lunch with Isabel, Arthur told her about the call. Her reaction was a mix of caution and hope. "Do you want to try?" she asked, sitting next to him. "I don't know. I've gotten used to being blind, and our life is so good as it is." "Daddy Arthur," Isabel interrupted, using the affectionate name she had adopted for him, "if you can see, you'll be able to see my drawings for real." The simplicity of the girl's observation deeply moved Arthur. For all these months, she had patiently described every drawing, every color, every detail. To see her face, her bright eyes, her smile, that would be worth any risk. "I'll talk to Mr. Carver about the legal aspects," he said, "and then we'll decide as a family." 2 weeks later, they were at the University Hospital for the first consultation. Isabel held Arthur's hand firmly as they walked through the corridors, fascinated by the advanced medical equipment. "Grandpa, this place is much bigger than the hospital in Oak Creek," she observed. "It is indeed, my love. They do special treatments here." Dr. Ricardo Montero, the neurosurgeon responsible for the procedure, was a young man, about 40 years old, with an evident enthusiasm for his work. "Mr. Vance, the procedure involves implanting a microscopic chip that stimulates the areas of the brain responsible for visual processing," he explained. "It's not a miracle cure, but it can restore between 30% to 70% of visual capacity." "And the risks?" asked Evelyn. "Like any brain surgery, there are risks, but in your specific case they are minimal. The stroke did not cause irreversible damage to the visual areas of the brain." "How long is the recovery?" Arthur questioned. "The procedure itself lasts 4 hours. Full recovery takes about 3 months, with several stages of visual rehabilitation." On the way back to Oak Creek, the family exhaustively discussed the pros and cons. Marion, who had joined them for the consultation, was all for it. "Arthur, you're only 69. You can have a completely new life if you regain your vision," she argued. "But our life is already complete," he replied. "I'm afraid the surgery will change our dynamic." "Daddy, you not being able to see has never been a problem for me," Isabel said with her typical honesty. "But if you want to see my faces, I think that's cool." That night, Arthur and Evelyn talked on the porch, watching the stars he couldn't see. "Evelyn, what do you really think?" "I think you should try," she answered after a long silence. "Not because our life isn't good, but because you deserve to have this chance. And what if something goes wrong during the surgery? Then we'll face it together, as we always have. She held his hand. But what if it works? Imagine being able to see Isabel grow up, see our company prosper, see the world with your own eyes again. A week later, Arthur made his decision. He scheduled the surgery for the first week of October. The preparations were intense. The company had to be temporarily managed by Evelyn and the new manager they had hired. Marion took charge of looking after Isabel during the hospitalization period. On the morning of the surgery, the whole family was in the hospital waiting room. Isabel had made a special drawing for her grandfather's luck, a rainbow with a smiling sun and the phrase, "For Grandpa to see the colors." "Daddy Arthur, when you wake up, will you be able to see this drawing?" she asked, handing him the carefully folded paper. "I hope so, my love, and it will be the most beautiful thing I'll ever see." Dr. Ricardo approached to take him to the operating room. "Mr. Vance, are you ready?" "I am." He hugged each family member. "See you on the other side." The 4 hours of surgery seemed to last an eternity. Evelyn paced nervously around the waiting room, while Marion tried to keep Isabel distracted with books and games. Finally, Dr. Ricardo appeared, still in his surgical scrubs. "The surgery was a complete success," he announced, smiling. The chip was implanted perfectly, and there were no complications. "Can he see already?" asked Isabel, running to the doctor. "Not yet, little one. He'll have his eyes bandaged for a week, and then we'll start testing gradually." During the week of recovery, Isabel never left her grandfather's bedside. She read stories to him, told him about everything happening in the hospital, and especially talked about all the beautiful things he could see when the bandages were removed. "Grandpa, our house is full of flowers now. Auntie Marion planted red roses and white daisies in the garden," she told him one afternoon. "And how are things at the company?" he asked. "Mummy said everything is running smoothly. The employees had a party to celebrate your surgery." "Really?" "Yes. And Uncle Mr. Carver brought a gift for you. It's a surprise for when you take the bandages off." On the day the bandages were to be removed, the whole family was present. Dr. Ricardo had warned that recovery would be gradual, that at first he would only see shapes and lights, and that full vision could take weeks. "Ready, Mr. Vance," the doctor said, beginning to carefully remove the bandages. "I'll take it slow. Tell me what you're feeling." When the last strip was removed, Arthur blinked several times, trying to process the sensations reaching his brain. I see light," he whispered, moved, "and shapes, blurs." Gradually, the shapes became clearer. First, he could make out the silhouette of Dr. Ricardo, then Evelyn beside the bed. "Evelyn," he said, reaching his hand toward her. "It's me," she replied, crying. You are beautiful." It was the first time he had clearly seen his wife's face. Then Isabel shyly approached the bed. "Grandpa, can you see me?" When Arthur focused on his granddaughter's face, he felt as if his heart would explode with emotion. The large, expressive eyes, the shy smile, the dark curls. It was exactly as he had imagined, but infinitely more beautiful. "My little granddaughter," he murmured, tears streaming freely. "You are the most beautiful child in the world." "Grandpa, are you crying because you can see me?" "I'm crying with happiness, my love." Isabel climbed onto the bed and showed him the rainbow drawing she had made. "Look, can you see the colors?" Arthur took the drawing and examined it carefully. The colors were a bit blurry, but he could distinguish each shade. "It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen," he said, hugging his granddaughter. Marion approached, also moved. "How are you feeling, brother?" "Like I've been born again," he replied, looking at each person in the room. "Like I can finally see what really matters in life." Dr. Ricardo smiled, satisfied with the result. Your vision will gradually improve over the next few weeks. In 3 months, you should have about 80% of normal visual capacity. When they returned to Oak Creek, Arthur spent hours observing every detail of the house, the company, the city he had known only through touch and hearing for so long. But mostly, he couldn't stop looking at Evelyn and Isabel, engraving every expression, every smile, every gesture in his memory. That night, as Isabel slept between him and Evelyn, Arthur contemplated his granddaughter's peaceful face and was absolutely certain that all the suffering of the past had been worth it to reach this moment of complete happiness. 3 months after the surgery, Arthur's vision was almost completely restored. With 75% of normal visual capacity, he had rediscovered the world around him in a way he never imagined possible. Each morning brought new discoveries. The facial expressions of Isabel as she told her school adventures, Evelyn's affectionate smile as she prepared coffee, the architectural details of Oak Creek he had completely forgotten. On that January morning, they were having breakfast on the porch when Isabel made an announcement that surprised everyone. "Daddy Arthur, Mommy, I have something important to tell you." "What is it, my love?" asked Evelyn, pouring orange juice. "At school, the teacher said that each child has to do a project about their family to present at the end of the year." Isabel paused, organizing her thoughts with the seriousness typical of a 5-year-old. "And I want to do a special project about Grandma Clara." Arthur and Evelyn looked at each other, touched by the girl's initiative. "What kind of project?" asked Arthur. "I want to tell her story to the whole school. How she was brave, how she discovered the bad men, how she saved our family even after she went to heaven." "Isabel, that's a beautiful idea," said Evelyn, moved. "But are you sure you want to talk about such serious things?" "Yes, I am, Mommy. The teacher said that heroes aren't just people in movies. Real people can be heroes too." Isabel drank her juice thoughtfully. "And Grandma Clara was our real hero." Marion, who had arrived for breakfast bringing fresh bread from the bakery, overheard the conversation. "What a wonderful project, Isabel. And how do you plan to tell the story?" "I want to make a book with drawings and photos, and I want Daddy Arthur to help me write the difficult words." "It will be an honor to help you, my love," said Arthur, still getting used to the joy of being able to see the excitement in his granddaughter's eyes. Over the following weeks, Isabel's project became a family activity. Every night after dinner, they would gather in the living room to work on Grandma Clara's book, as the girl had named it. Evelyn provided old photos of her mother, documents from the time she worked at Vance Materials, and even some personal items that had been preserved. Marion contributed with stories about how Clara was beloved in the neighborhood, always helping neighbors and participating in church activities. "Grandpa, can you tell me what Grandma Clara was like when she worked at your company?" Isabel asked one night as she drew a woman in a cleaning uniform. Arthur thought carefully before answering. "Your grandmother was a very special person, Isabel. She always arrived early, greeted everyone with a smile, and left everything very clean and organized." "And was she happy?" "Very happy. She always hummed while she worked and spoke fondly of her daughter, your mommy, who was in college at the time." "Why didn't you like her in the end?" The child's direct question caught Arthur off guard. Evelyn prepared to intervene, but he motioned for her to wait. "You know, Isabel, sometimes adults make very serious mistakes. I made a terrible mistake with your grandmother because I believed lies about her, without giving her a chance to explain herself." "But did you regret it?" "Very much. And because of that, every day I thank your grandmother for being so brave, because it was her courage that allowed me to meet you and your mommy." Isabel nodded, satisfied with the answer, and returned to her drawing. The project grew beyond expectations. In addition to the book, Isabel decided to create a simple theatrical presentation where she would play different characters from the story. Marion offered to sew the costumes, and Arthur built cardboard sets in the backyard. "Daddy Arthur, can you play the role of the bad man?" Isabel asked during a rehearsal. "You want me to play the villain?" "Yes. Because in real life, you're not a villain anymore. You turned good." The girl's childish logic made everyone laugh. The school became so interested in the project that they decided to hold a special presentation for the entire community. Isabel's teacher, Mrs. Helena, an experienced woman in her 60s, was impressed with the girl's maturity and determination. "Evelyn," she said during a meeting at the school, "Isabel has an exceptional ability to turn difficult experiences into positive learning. It's rare to see that in such a young child." "She inherited that from my mother," Evelyn replied, proud. "Clara always said that life's difficulties are meant to teach us to value the good things." On the day of the presentation, the school was packed. In addition to the students' parents, people from all over Oak Creek who had followed the family's story in the local newspapers attended. Mr. Carver was present, as were D.A. Diaz, Sebastian Rose, and even employees from the new Vance Materials. Isabel took the small makeshift stage in the schoolyard, wearing a uniform identical to the one Clara used, lovingly made by Marion. "My name is Isabel, and this is the story of my grandma Clara Reed, who was a real hero," she began, her voice clear and firm. For 20 minutes, she told the story in a simple but impactful way. She spoke about how Clara worked honestly, how she discovered people doing wrong things, how she tried to warn the right people, and how her courage saved many people, even after she went to heaven. "Grandma Clara didn't have superpowers like the heroes in the movies," Isabel said, reaching the end of her presentation. "But she had something more important. She had the courage to do what was right, even when it was dangerous." The audience was completely silent, many with tears in their eyes. "That's why," the girl continued, "I want to be like her when I grow up. I want to be brave. I want to help people. And I always want to do what's right." The applause that followed was long and emotional. Arthur, sitting in the front row, could clearly see his granddaughter's radiant face and felt his heart overflowing with pride. After the presentation, many people approached to congratulate the family. Among them, a surprise, Joe, Rose's brother-in-law, who had helped them escape to Boston. "I couldn't miss this presentation," he said, hugging Arthur. "When Rose told me about Isabel's project, I had to come see." "Joe, what a joy to see you," Arthur replied. "How did you know?" "Your story spread throughout the whole region. It became an example that justice still exists." Joe knelt in front of Isabel. "Little girl, you spoke better than many lawyers I've seen." That night at home, while Isabel slept hugging the certificate she had won from the school for the most inspiring project, Arthur and Evelyn talked on the porch. "Evelyn, do you realize what our daughter did today?" "Of course. She honored my mother's memory in a way I never could have. More than that, she transformed all the pain we went through into something positive, educational, inspiring." Arthur held his wife's hand. "Clara would be proud. I'm sure she was there somehow, watching everything. And you know what impresses me the most? Isabel didn't talk about revenge, about anger, about suffering. She focused on courage, on justice, on love. She's a special child. She's our special child." 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. The director of the hospital where Clara had done her last cleaning jobs sought out the family to make a surprising invitation. "We would like Isabel to be our special speaker at the inauguration of the Clara Reed Pediatric Wing," he said during a visit to the company. "The story she told at school reached us, and we thought it would be perfect to have her represent the family." "She's too young for such a responsibility," said Evelyn, worried. "Mommy," interrupted Isabel, who had overheard the conversation, "I want to speak at the hospital. I want to tell more people about Grandma." "Are you sure, my love?" "I am, and I'm going to tell the sick children that Grandma is looking after them from heaven, just like she looks after us." Arthur looked at Evelyn, then at his daughter. If she wants to, and if you believe she can, then we'll support her. And so, a month later, Isabel became the youngest speaker in the hospital's history, speaking about courage, family, and hope to an audience of doctors, nurses, officials, and patients' families. When she finished her simple yet powerful speech, there were 5 uninterrupted minutes of applause, and Arthur, seeing his granddaughter wave shyly to the audience, knew they were raising not just a happy child, but a person who would make a difference in the world. A year had passed since the presentation at the hospital, and the family's life had found a perfect balance of prosperity, purpose, and genuine happiness. Isabel, now 6, was in 1st grade and continued to surprise everyone with her maturity and natural generosity. On that March morning, Arthur was in his office when he received a call that would bring the last and most unexpected twist to their lives. "Mr. Vance, this is Dr. Patricia Mendonça from the National Institute of Medical Research in New York." An enthusiastic female voice said, "Yes, doctor. Sir, we are studying exceptional cases of neurological recovery, and yours has caught our attention. We would like to include you in a pioneering study that could benefit thousands of people." "What kind of research?" "We've discovered that in some patients, like yourself, the vision restoration surgery triggers a broader neurological regeneration. Some recover cognitive abilities they had lost, others develop heightened sensory skills." Arthur frowned. "And in my case?" "We would like to run some detailed tests. There are indications that your surgery may have restored more than just your vision." When Evelyn arrived for lunch with Isabel, Arthur told her about the call. Both reacted with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Daddy Arthur, does this mean you can get even better?" Isabel asked, always direct. "I don't know, my love. Maybe it means I can help other people who have gone through what I went through." "That would be cool," the girl exclaimed, "just like how Grandma Clara helped people even after she went to heaven." The comparison deeply moved Arthur. Isabel's simple wisdom always found perfect parallels between complex situations. 2 weeks later, they traveled to New York for the tests. The National Institute was an impressive medical complex with state-of-the-art equipment and a team of internationally renowned researchers. Dr. Patricia proved to be a brilliant woman in her late 40s with a contagious enthusiasm for medical research. "Mr. Vance, your tests have revealed something extraordinary," she said, showing images of his brain on a computer screen. "The surgery not only restored your vision, but also regenerated neural connections in areas responsible for memory, cognition, and even intuition." "What does that mean in practical terms?" asked Evelyn. "It means that Mr. Vance now has cognitive abilities superior to the norm for his age, a nearly perfect photographic memory, accelerated processing speed, and something we call heightened intuition." Arthur remembered the past few months when he had noticed an unusual ease in solving complex problems at the company, remembering minute details of old conversations, and especially an almost supernatural ability to understand the emotional needs of those around him. "That explains a lot," he murmured. "And there's more," Dr. Patricia continued. "We would like to propose something revolutionary. With your permission, we would like to document your case and create a treatment protocol based on your recovery. This could help thousands of people with traumatic brain injury." "What would that involve?" asked Evelyn. "Participation in a medical documentary, a few lectures at universities, and regular collaboration with us to refine the protocol." Isabel, who had been following the whole conversation intently, raised her hand as she did in school. "Can I ask a question?" "Of course, dear," Dr. Patricia replied, smiling. "If Grandpa Arthur helps you, will other blind people be able to see?" "Many people, yes." "Then he has to help," Isabel declared with conviction, "because it's just like what Grandma Clara did. She helped people even when it was dangerous." The child's simple logic convinced Arthur immediately. "Dr. Patricia, I accept to participate in the research." In the following months, the family's life took on a completely new dimension. Arthur became an international case study, participating in virtual medical conferences and contributing to the development of treatments that would benefit thousands. Advanced materials continued to thrive, now with even more efficient management thanks to Arthur's enhanced abilities. More importantly, he created a social responsibility program at the company, offering decent jobs to people with visual impairments. Evelyn discovered a calling for coordinating social projects and became the director of an institute funded by the company, dedicated to supporting families who had lost loved ones in traumatic circumstances. Marion opened a small bakery in downtown Oak Creek, specializing in traditional New England pastries. The establishment became a community meeting point and a source of pride for the whole family. Isabel continued to be the extraordinary child she had always been. At 7, she had become a little ambassador for the family's story, participating in educational events at schools in the region and always talking about courage, justice, and the importance of doing what is right. On the 2nd anniversary of Arthur and Evelyn's wedding, they decided to have a special celebration. They gathered everyone who had been part of their journey: Mr. Carver, D.A. Diaz, Sebastian, Rose, Joe, Dr. Patricia, and dozens of friends and employees. The party was held at Advanced Materials itself, which had been decorated with flowers and lights for the occasion. During dinner, Arthur asked for the floor. "Friends, 3 years ago, I was a broken man, alone, and without hope. I thought my life was over when I lost my sight." He looked at Evelyn and Isabel sitting beside him. "Today, I can say that that loss was necessary for me to find what really matters." He paused, moved. Clara Reed never imagined that her courage would save not only her family, but dozens of other families. Through the evidence she collected, we uncovered a network of corruption that was harming the entire region. "But most importantly," he continued, "through her granddaughter Isabel, we learned that love can heal any wound, that family can be built through choice and commitment, and that there is always hope, even in the most difficult situations." Isabel stood up from her chair and asked to speak too. "Everybody," she said with her clear and determined voice, "I want to thank everyone who helped our family. And I want to say that when I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor like Dr. Patricia to help blind people see." She paused, organizing her thoughts. "And I'm also going to be a detective to find out when bad people are doing bad things." The audience laughed affectionately, but also recognized the girl's seriousness. "And most importantly," Isabel continued, "I will always remind everyone that Grandma Clara taught us that being brave isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing what's right anyway." The applause was long and emotional. When the party ended and everyone had gone home, the family gathered in their living room as they did every night. "Daddy Arthur," Isabel said, already in her pajamas, "can I ask an important question?" "Of course, my love. Are you happy now?" Arthur looked around the room, seeing his wife organizing photos from the party, Marion preparing tea in the kitchen, and his curious granddaughter waiting for the answer. "Isabel, I didn't know what true happiness was until you all came into my life," he replied. "Now, I understand that happiness isn't having everything we want. It's wanting everything we have. And I have you all," the girl added, "and we have you." That night, when Isabel finally fell asleep between Arthur and Evelyn, as she still liked to do sometimes, he contemplated his granddaughter's peaceful face and thought about the extraordinary journey they had traveled together. 3 years ago, a 4-year-old girl had offered water from a fountain to a desperate man, telling him it would cure his blindness. At the time, It seemed like just the innocent fantasy of a child. Now Arthur understood that Isabel had been right from the very first moment. The water from the fountain hadn't cured his physical blindness. That had been the result of years of medical treatment and a complex surgery. But the encounter with that extraordinary girl had cured something much more important: his emotional blindness, his inability to see what truly mattered in life. Through Isabel, he had found Evelyn. Through Evelyn, he had discovered the truth about Clara. And through the truth about Clara, he had recovered not only his company and his vision, but most importantly, his soul. As he watched his granddaughter sleep, Arthur knew that Clara Reed was somewhere, proud to see how her courage had planted seeds of love and justice that would continue to flourish for generations. The girl who had once drawn sad, caged birds now drew colorful birds flying freely in the sky. And in that simple transformation was contained all the magic of a family that had chosen love over resentment, hope over despair, and unity over loneliness. The story that had begun with cries of pain on a March afternoon had transformed into the most beautiful symphony of love, redemption, and second chances that any of them could have imagined. And they lived happily ever after, not because they faced no more difficulties, but because they learned that any storm can be weathered when you have a true family by your side. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.